People say, well, it takes 2 to 3 to 4 years to transform a culture. It does not. It takes one day if you do it right. And then you've got to build on it so that things continue to go, but it takes one day to have a huge shift when you create this common shared experience where people come alive and they have this permission to be great.
So how many of you want to have much more of a shift culturally so your people like get it head on all the time? How many of you, when you teach somebody something, you want them to actually get it so you're not having to repeat it over and over again? And how many of you want to have as much fun as Tori has every day?
When I go on stage, I know I have a very short period of time to not only get people to have different understandings, but to shift their consciousness within that period of time. And I realize that there are many people who come into a session with their arms crossed, and they've already made a decision to be miserable. And they've made a decision that whatever they're going to learn, they're not going to apply because they have a commitment to the people back at the ranch that no matter what happens, that they have signed on for misery at work. Because if they didn't have that agreement, that implicit agreement, they wouldn't have anything to talk about how awful management is and how awful leadership is. And so I get that if I'm on stage with an entire organization or different levels within the organization, that it is my job to break that mindset like that. And that before that 45 minutes is over, they have to be thinking differently about life. And there's a lot of mechanisms that I use to do that. And I think part of it is like speaking into the soul of people. So if I know that you're the troublemaker, which they told me that already, but if I know you're the troublemaker and that you're the one that's acting out, I got to tell you that I'm picking up on that because of the language that you're using while I'm presenting, and so my conversation needs to come right into your heart. You need to know like that you're the only person in the world that I'm talking to, because when that happens, now you know I care.
I've seen miracles. I'll tell you, there was a bank in Minnesota that I did this with like 13, 14 years ago, and this bank had the world's worst receptionist. I mean, when you called in, you thought this woman's just going to slit her wrist. She is one miserable human being. She was the person you would call to get transferred into the president. So before we had done their kickoff, I had said to the president, I got to tell you, that receptionist is a bit of a hurdle for you. I think that she's taken a good $1 million out of the bottom line every year. She is having an impact extraordinaire. And so she's going to have to be dealt with. But I said, but do not get rid of her till after the kickoff because there's a chance that we can bring her along. Well, it was interesting because after the kickoff, I never really called through and got her. But then about a month and a half later, I call in for the president, and the receptionist answered the phone, and she's just delightful. And so I go to the president, and I said, gosh, who's answering your phones? That is the best phone I've ever heard. And he says, oh my gosh, that's Carol. That's the one you told me was the worst receptionist you ever heard. So hold the possibility they can shift. People hold people in a certain way, and they stick a certain way. Have you noticed that you're different around different people? That's because they're holding you to be a certain way. So I remember I had a job one time, they thought I was the most organized, anal retentive person ever. These guys can tell you I'm not. They'll clarify that one. They're going, yeah, whoever thought that one. But around them, because I had to be, I was. You know, when you're in banking, there's just things you got to keep clean, and you got to have respect for detail. But do I like detail? Am I good at detail? It exhausts me to the core of my being, okay? But I have respect for it. But they held me as that, and they used to tease me about being that, and so I became even more of that, okay? If somebody holds you as being grumpy, what do you become? Grumpier. If somebody holds you as being a good person, what do you become? A better person. If they think that you are the drudge of the universe, guess what? You'll be more of that. And this is something to think about, because when you're dealing with employees who are hassling you, and they start to bug you, it's pretty easy to find all the things that are wrong with them and forget about some of the things that are still good in them.
Organizations are always saying, if I could grow 2 or 3%, and I'm thinking, who wants to shoot wildly for mediocrity? Really, if you were a really high-performing individual and you were looking for a new job and you came into this organization, they said, this year we're going to shoot for 2 to 3% growth. If you were a mover and shaker, that is not going to engage you. This is not where you want to be. And so you will find people who are shooting wildly for mediocrity when you have goals like that. And so I'm not saying that you grow recklessly or without profits. In fact, I'm a firm believer that growth has to be combined with increased profitability of that growth. And very few companies know how to do both at the same time, but you must figure that part out. But growth is what we're about. I mean, that's why we're alive.
It's interesting. We figured out about 2 years ago, we started looking at the banks and seeing who was doing the best. And one of the big distinguishing factors was we figured out that as soon as they really got this stop with the gossip stuff, we mean it, that's when they turned around. And when results start going back down again, guess what? More gossip is happening. Who's the last one to know that gossip is going on? Leadership, right? Because they don't come to the leaders and gossip, because the leaders would go, what the heck? They got to be leaders because they're intolerant of that stuff. So they'd go, what the heck? Go clean that up, okay? So you're the last ones to know, but do you feel it? You know it all the time, okay? So the only way to work through conflict is to have a team who calls it tight. And so if they're allowing each other, as we called it yesterday, the green stamp, to say, well, you can gossip about that, and then I can gossip about this, and that. We got this little pattern going here, and that way we're both safe because we're both participating. That's when you got sickness going on in the organization. And that's the stuff that'll kill you. There's just no way around it. And that's the stuff where you gotta really get your people to understand, be intolerant, take a stand. Everyone's a leader. I'll tell you, if I'm motivated by any two things in life, there are two things that just really get to me. One is when I ask the question in a kickoff and I say, how many of you would like the gossip to go away and are hurt by gossip? And I ask the question and the tears begin to roll. I can see them from the front. The tears begin to roll. It is so abusive. It is so painful for people, and they have no idea how to stop it. Okay? The only way it can be stopped is when you say, if you do it again, you're out of here. See you, bye, love you, but gotta go, okay? Let's just get clear about this is not okay behavior here. I don't care if you're the top performer. I don't care if you're the second top performer. If you're doing it, you gotta go. Because once you allow it for one person, what happens? The spread begins, and the craziness begins, and nobody knows what to believe because all they're hearing is the trash that isn't true, and they don't know what to believe, and so everybody just gets sucked dry by the ugliness of that whole thing. So this is a really important one to take a stand on and to really get across to people, hey, zero tolerance, clean it up. When we come to work here, we're going to be grown-ups, And when they get that that's the rules of the game, guess what they do? They play by the rules of the game. But the team has to hold them tight. And without that, it's not going to happen. So as leaders, we got to really make it clear that we support the team members in calling it tight.
It is my dream that people will stop using the language of victimhood and martyrdom and excuses and say things like, well, my CEO would never listen to me, or my leadership team would never hear what I have to say. Every time I have a leader who hears those words, every one of them goes completely crazy. Every leader wants people who have a voice. Now, they don't want to hear somebody walking in with their hands on their hips saying, if you would just listen to me and you jerk you. I mean, how we present it matters. And it is my dream that when people read the book, that they will begin to reignite that fire and realize that they don't have to buy into my place doesn't work. And in fact, most people who want to switch jobs because they think my place isn't right really don't need to switch jobs at all because they'll create the same mess someplace else. They need to get about making the shift right where they're at.
So my question is, can you guys do this?
Yes.
Can you guys do this?
Yes.
And will you do this?
Yes.
Starting when?
Yes.
Got it. Okay, when you get back there tomorrow, boom, you fly right into this. Don't forget that you learned this stuff. Immediately practice it tomorrow. Because they have proven that if you apply things within 24 hours that you've learned, it sticks. When you choose how to be, the doing takes care of itself. And so I challenge you to make sure that everyone who encounters you on the way home and tomorrow morning when you're back in your organization knows that you have chosen to be something other than what you had chosen to be in the past, and it should show in all of your actions, all of your interactions, and all of your joy that you have from deciding to be this person that makes it happen. It has been my honor to be with you the last couple days for most of you. You guys have been an absolute joy to be around, and I get that you have chosen transformation. It's a hoot. Thanks so much, guys. You rock.